Welcome to A Quest for Metal and welcome to the first episode of Battle of the Bands, and today, for the first episode, we're going to Gothenburg and also Liverpool, England. We're going to do a melodic death metal matchup with At the Gates and Carcass. And how this series is going to work is we're going to pit two bands against each other and pit their albums against each other. So the first album from the first band is going up against the first album of the second band. And we're going to see which one we prefer. It's going to be different for everyone, so I want you guys to play along at home. And I know Male Meltdown's going to hate this one because he loves both these bands, and I love them too, but he loves them, so I'm interested to see his opinion if he's watching this. But yeah, At the Gates versus Carcass, Melodeath masters, and they weren't always pure Melodeath, but we'll get to that. So, let me know down below, and let's get started with the debuts. So, Carcass's one is Reek of Putrefaction, and that's going up against At the Gates. The Red in the Sky is Ours. Two very different albums, both pretty interesting. I will say that I have a clear winner for this one, and this may trigger some people, but I think the winner for this one is easily At the Gates. The Red in the Sky is Ours. I think it's a masterpiece. Very melancholic, but also aggressive at the same time. A lot easier listening, whereas Carcass's Reek of Putrefaction is more of a grindcore-y kind of record, gore grind record, which I'm not really a big fan of, because Carcass used to be in that grind territory, but ever since they evolved, that's when I started to enjoy Carcass more. So I much prefer later Carcass, as we'll probably see in the list. It's going to be interesting to pit some of those albums against each other. But for me, I never return to Reek of Putrefaction, but I always return to The Red in the Sky is Ours because I think it's a underrated gem by At the Gates, and it's one of the best albums. So it's a clear winner for me. Red in the Sky is Ours takes the first spot. So next up, Symphonies of Sickness versus At the Gates is Fear I Kiss the Burning Darkness. Again, I do think Symphonies of Sickness is a better album than Reek. I actually do return to this one, but not as much as any of the Carcass albums. And with Fear I Kiss the Burning Darkness is, again, amazing album. So I gotta give it to At the Gates again, because of the stylistic difference. And you may think this is just gonna be a landslide with At the Gates, but trust me, it'll change. But yeah, with Fear I Kiss the Burning Darkness, beautiful album. I don't think it's quite as good as Red in the Sky is Ours, but it still keeps that kind of atmosphere and that dread and the mood of the first one. Not quite as good, but I still prefer it to Symphonies of Sickness, which I don't return to that often. So yeah, At the Gates is another winner. Next up, Terminal Spirit Disease, a great album, love it, versus Necroticism. Holy shit, this is when Carcass just went boom, and it instantly went from me kind of they're okay, don't see the hype, to holy shit, this band is insane. Necroticism is amazing, taking everything from Symphonies and just elevating it to just death metal, rather than death grind or gore grind or whatever the fuck you want to call them, into actually just pure death metal. This is a death metal album, it's not even melodic death, this is just fucking pure death. And I love it. The songs are longer, which it's questy. I like my longer songs, as opposed to the grind stuff. So I like it a lot more. The riffs, catchy, just the songs hit, and they hit hard and they don't stop. Necroticism is a masterpiece, and it's one of Carcass's best albums. So this is easily going to Carcass. Come on, I'm gushing all over Carcass. Carcass is winning this one. It's not even close. I mean, Terminal Spirit Disease is a really underrated album. I really like it more than probably the other two, maybe? I don't know, it's hard. But I still prefer this one. Come on, Necroticism, it has to be Carcass. Next up is Heartwork versus Slaughter of the Soul. Oh my god, two absolute classics of the genre, but I do prefer one to the other. And that one is going to, that's right, Carcass. Carcass is winning this one with Heartwork. They kind of nailed the melodic death metal sound on this album, and since then I just think they get better and better and better. With At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul, cut back to my previous ranking of At the Gates, where I had it at number 1. I'm going to retract that statement. It's probably like mid for me now. I know it's a classic. I know everyone loves it, but there's a lot of like the sound of it's very strange. Whereas Heartwork's like pure brutal intensity, melodic perfection. I think Heartwork is just so much of a better album than Slaughter of the Soul, even though I still enjoy Slaughter, but I've come to appreciate the other At the Gates albums more than Slaughter of the Soul at the moment, and I'm not big on the hype train, so it's probably going to trigger everyone. Ooh. But Heartwork is easily taking the biscuit for this one, because Heartwork is one of the best melodic albums of all time. There we have it. Next up is At War with Reality and Swan Song. An easy one. Swan Song's pretty good, pretty doomy, pretty funky and groovy, but it's no At War with Reality, which is a comeback album, and oh boy, it blew my socks off. At War with Reality is probably my favourite At the Gates album. Probably my favourite At the Gates album. So this one is, is an easy one. At War with Reality it is. It's not even close, to be honest. At War with Reality is fucking majestic, and I much prefer it. Much prefer it to Slaughter of the Soul. Slaughter of the Soul was more fast, energetic, and punchy and in your face, kind of catchy, whereas At War with Reality was more methodical and moody, and I like that sound more. Kind of more like Insomnium, later Enslaved, that kind of sound. And that's what I like more with At War with Reality, and that's why it's in the background here, because it's the best out of all these albums. Love it. It's coming here. Surgical Steel, Carcass's comeback album, versus To Drink from the Night Itself. Both albums I actually love. This was actually a hard one. Loads of people don't like To Drink from the Night Itself, but I love its moody themes, because it's just like At War with Reality, just a bit moodier, so it's probably one of my favourite At the Gates albums. I even got the shirt for it. But it's against Surgical Steel, and Surgical Steel is a masterpiece comeback album with so many precision riffs and just mechanical headbanging segments. It's fantastic. It's absolutely... This one is the hardest one. This one, I know it probably wouldn't be. Most people would pick Surgical Steel, but as much as I like To Drink from the Night Itself, Surgical Steel is probably one of my favourite Carcass albums, so Surgical Steel it had to be, even though this one pained me to pick one, you bastards. But yeah, it's going to go to Surgical Steel. Carcass wins this one. So last up, the newest albums by both these bands, Torn Arteries by Carcass and The Nightmare of Being by At the Gates. Now this one is actually an easy one for me. I'm going straight for the jugular with Carcass Torn Arteries. This is my favourite Carcass album now. I've listened to it ever since it came out on repeat, and it's fucking phenomenal. Just like Surgical Steel, except better. Kelly's Meat Emporium. Every song is catchy on this album. Every single song. The Nightmare of Being is a bit different to the two previous albums, which I prefer by At the Gates. I'm not too big into the new At the Gates. I think it's good. It still has a kind of moody edge to it, but it's a bit more progressive. Bit jazzy at times, and it's a bit stranger. Maybe it'll take more time for that one to develop and grow, but for me, Carcass's Torn Arteries hit me straight away, and it never stopped, and I still listen to it today, and it's probably one of the best death metal albums of the year, of last year, so Torn Arteries it is. So who's the overall winner? Drumroll, Carcass. Carcass is the winner of the first battle of the bands, from 4-3. Carcass just edged it out. I like both these bands, but it seems like I like Carcass a little bit more. So that is the results of the first battle of the bands. Let me know what bands you'd want me to pit up against next. Let me know down below. And what would you pick? Which album would you choose out of the two? Let me know down below, and we'll see you again on another Quest for Metal.